Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to my next little interview about creativity, which today is with an American living in the Netherlands by the name of Hannah Huber, who has just published a novel entitled Home. And so I really wanted to pick her brain because I've known Hannah for a couple of years, and novelist was not one of her job descriptions when we first met. So good day, Hannah, and welcome. Nice to have you here today.
Thanks, David. Thanks so much for having me. And it's interesting to have you. I actually like how you said it's called home because it's actually called place, but I think we need to talk about whether there's a difference or not in place and home, because that's really what it all comes down to.
That is so bad. It's even lying on my desk here next to me.
And,
Right, so place. Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess the first question I really wanted to ask you, because it's a question I get quite a lot as a writer, is like, so what's so special about you that you get to write a novel?
Oh, well, that's the thing with this book is, and that's a process. That's something I had to get used to because I don't think there's anything necessarily special about me per se. As an individual, I think everyone has a story to share with the world, everybody. And I started out writing a memoir, actually, thinking that my story was interesting enough to tell the world my individual story. Um, and then I realized there wasn't enough conflict and excitement. And that was actually a writing instructor gave me the feedback of, you might want to try autofiction, which brings in some autobiographical elements into, and then just make more fiction by adding some drama, some conflict. And so I tried that, but it was so hard to separate the two to actually come up with fiction, which is a world that I wasn't really familiar with. I was always used to reading nonfiction and biographies, and I felt like if you're going to sit down and read, you have to learn something. Um, so it was this whole process of getting comfortable with sharing my own story and trying to find the right genre to share that story, and um, just saying to the world, look, everyone's story is important. Mine, I can make it more interesting for you and for you as a reader by adding some of these little tidbits to bring you through to the end, instead of just blabbing off about my own life, but just showing where the elements of my life that readers might find interesting and be able to relate to. And that's why this particular book has gone through three genres, being a memoir, autofiction, and eventually fiction.
Yeah, because obviously as someone who knows you quite well, um, on reading the book, I was immediately struck by like, oh, hang on, but this sounds a lot like the life of yours that I know. How much of this is fiction and how much is not?
Right. Yes.
I mean, I'm not expecting you to tell me that right now because that would ruin it all. But how did you walk that line? I mean, you've just hinted a little bit at it, but on a practical level, how did you do that?
Well, thank goodness for people like developmental editors, which I was lucky enough to find one that I had a really good click with. It just so happens that her last name is also Huber, but no relation. So Andy Huber, who is an editor by profession, she happened to be in Amsterdam and we got to being friends. And I said, would you be willing and able to kind of coach me through this, to play devil's advocate? I think everyone needs a devil's advocate while they're writing, someone to call you out on things that we all have our blind spots while writing. And so I had a developmental editor throughout, and I would put myself on a timeline and submit chapters to her. So every week, one chapter, and then she'd give me feedback. And every little thing from, wait a second, didn't you have your dog on a walk in this scene? I think you forgot about the dog. To this is not going to go well with readers, or this is being misinterpreted. And just to kind of keep the storyline going and give it more form. But not only her feedback, I was part of a Amsterdam writing workshops in the beginning stages just to get more comfortable with writing. It's not something that I did much. It's just when I turned 40, I started getting up at 5 a.m. and actually handwriting what I thought was going to be the first book. And after about 3 days into that, 5 a.m. getting up, that was it. And so then I joined the writing feedback group, which provided a comfortable, safe environment to share writing in the beginning stages and get professional feedback from someone who is trained in writing. And they say if you write a lot, you have to read a lot. So I would read a lot of fiction or whatever genre at the time I was working on, and a lot of memoirs. So that's all those different stages, and then once I felt like the feedback group was no longer necessary, then I started working with a development editor. and then had another beta reader round and got their feedback. So all these different stages helped me get to the finished product in the end.
I'm loving this because I think, one of the myths of creativity is this idea of the lone genius slaving away in their ivory tower, right? And it is a myth, and it's just so nice to hear you. So you actually had a team of different
Whole
kinds of
team.
people.
Yes, along the entire process, an entire team of people. And people often say, oh, acknowledgements are so long, but that's really for a reason. There is this whole team of people behind everything from the cover design, the illustrator, the layouts for the book, things that don't normally think about, but there's someone out there that has that skill set. And that's what I love about, you mentioned we knew each other in my previous life, running the Spark conference for female entrepreneurs. And I actually combed through my LinkedIn and my contacts from that and found entrepreneurs who specialized in cover design or layout, and just gathered a team together, just like I used to do for conferences and scouting speakers to speak at a conference. I scouted out professionals to help me bring this book to life. So that was such an exciting process, and nice that it was a team effort and always had back and forth going on the entire time with people.
One of the things I like to say to people is that nothing you've ever learned is wasted. There's always an opportunity or something that happens for one to double back and to reconnect with people or repurpose what you've learned. So I like to hear that as well, that all the work that you put into the Spark conference over the years was also part of delivering a novel.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And also so much inspiration from other people that have put work out there, including yourself with your poetry book.
Yeah.
And also having the whole digital aspect, because I think there's just something scary about self-publishing. People think, oh, how am I ever going to tackle that? And then just by having people to call upon to ask, well, how did you do that? How do you do the digital part? How do you make an EPUB doc to get it out there as an ebook? And just going through the steps, and like everyone else, all the back end that's involved in all of that. So it's nice to be able to call upon a team of people to walk through the steps.
Let's talk about that dirty word there for a moment, self-publishing. Why did you choose to do that in the first instance?
Well, it became apparent pretty quickly that my chances were going to be about 0% of getting this book published in the Netherlands, simply because it's in English. For starters, a former neighbor of mine in Amsterdam, Kantoortje van Remco, I actually emailed him, and he works in the publishing world, and he says, and luckily, he, along with another person in the industry, said, your chances are just 0%. So just setting the bar up front, not expectation management. If it's a success in the US or the UK or an English speaking country, then you can have it translated into Dutch and start and have a publisher here and go through. So, okay, that's clear. I never even imagined that would be the process, but okay, that makes sense. And so then I started looking into publishing houses in the US and in the UK. And on most of the websites, the homepage said, we're not accepting any manuscripts. We're just oversaturated, especially during the pandemic. Everyone and their mom decided to write a book. So it's just, I knew my chances were very slim. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm going to have to roll up my own sleeves, which is actually something I enjoy doing, figuring things out. And I had, luckily, the time and space to do so during the pandemic, with a lockdown here or there that I had to kind of put it aside. But that's where I realized it's you learn so much and you have so much more control. And I also met up with a woman named Natasha Beil, who wrote a book, Maak van je boek een succes. So I met up with her for a coffee, and she also convinced me that this is a way to go. Also, how much money you keep for yourself versus if you go through a publishing house. There's, the financials make so much more sense of it. So of course there's prestige around an actual publishing house and having a real agent. So I had to let that go and just think, the story has to get out there one way or another. And to tell you the truth, it actually started by wanting to do a PhD, this whole book about home and the ideas of place and where does one feel at home. And realizing pretty quickly, question 8, when it got into the theoretical bit of the application for the PhD, that I'm not that much of an academic. That's when I went the whole writing route. And so thanks to these people that encouraged me to do self-publishing. I thought, this, just let go of all the hang-ups, I guess, or that you create in your own mind of, oh, having a publisher is so much better than self-publishing. These days, self-publishing really, I think, has a new reputation is not the word. What word am I looking for? It's just a new
the way I
jacket.
look at it is that, you know, publishers, it's like record companies, right? They were always the tastemakers, the gatekeepers. If it came through that, you knew it was quality. And, you know, everything is just moving too fast for that still to be, strictly speaking, true.
Right.
And because everything now costs more in terms of marketing and production, both record companies and publishers are tending to only take on new artists, for lack of a better word, who already have a reputation, because they can't afford to develop you.
Right.
And so they are waiting for people like you and like me to publish things themselves. And when they become a success, then suddenly they're like, oh, well, we can license that, and we can do international distribution and maybe a fancier whatever edition. And that's kind of how it starts to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also intrigued by what you said about the finances.
Right.
I remember when I was still a music journalist, there was a comparison made that Annie DeFranco, who used to record and release her own music, earned 10 times as much per sale as Madonna did when she was on a major label.
Wow.
And so even though she sold a tenth as many records as Madonna, royalties-wise, she earned the same.
Right. Yeah.
It's quite a sobering way of looking at it, right?
Yeah. I love Annie DeFranco, by the way. But yeah, that is a good way. And that's exactly how Natasha also spelled it out to me. Like, okay, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also just to be able to choose your own cover and font. And, you know, I was obsessive going around the house with a ruler, doing margins of different books and trying to get the right paper weight. But it's nice to make those decisions yourself and really through the whole process, all the little details, to be in control of those, and to have your own Amazon warehouse in your own home is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Put on some Sky Radio during Christmas and package up all the books and send them off.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what's also interesting about this conversation, this part of the conversation, is what do you want? How much do you want it? You know,
that's where it all starts. Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of people get stuck because what they want is a publishing deal. What they want is the prestige. What they don't want is to actually publish a book. Like that's secondary. But when that's really your drive, this is, I feel, what the result is. You go and make a plan.
Right.
Because the challenges that you outlined are not unique to you. I mean, okay, yeah, the being in the Netherlands and publishing in English part is, but the rest of what you explained is the situation.
Yeah. And and you have to really want it. And of course it's discouraging at times, but it's all about planning, like you said, just having that Excel. I already started making a whole list of who can I market to, who would be interested in this book, and just reaching out, making the perfect press release, sending that out. And still also now that's what I'm focusing on, is just getting the word out there about this book. It's just not going to land on people's doorstep. You really have to put yourself out there and go to local bookshops and get in the local paper and spread the word.
If anything, that's what makes you special about in this book publishing process, because I think that's the part that not everybody has, and not everybody can do.
It is difficult. I mean, it's something I enjoy, and I realize not everyone does enjoy the part. So that's when I think it makes sense just to find someone in your network and comb your LinkedIn to find who might be willing and able, even maybe for a small fee, or a friend, just to take that bit over.
Yeah. Who else was on your team? I mean, we've talked a lot of practical stuff, but I mean, obviously there's a lot more going on there. And so who else was on the team, and what was their role?
Okay, let's see. Well, it depends how far you want to go back with the team aspect, because I consider people in the Amsterdam writing workshops part of the team, because they were there for the beginning and providing feedback. So Lisa Friedman, a shout out to her. And then I have a writing instructor in California who's actually coming here to teach a writing course in June, Lisa Doctor. So she provided a lot of feedback for the first chapter, especially, which is important, because that's often the chapter that you submit to people to get them interested. And then I had Lisa Hall, who did the layout. She's based in The Hague. I had Siegdem Guven, who did the actual cover, graphic design of the cover. And then I had Evelien Weideveld, who, a friend of mine, a childhood friend, sent me her Instagram. This is a Dutch woman who lives in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, who made these drawings. And my friend said, wouldn't this be perfect for your book? I'm like, yes, it would. So she did a custom drawing for that, and even have an Amish buggy there to shout out or wink to Pennsylvania. So she was part of the team. Gosh, I had loads of beta readers, mostly in Hilversum, a Dutch and international, who volunteered to read the book in the beginning stages and provide feedback, and a college friend in the UK. So it's just, gosh, and I know I'm leaving out people, but it's just.
This is a really interesting answer, because actually that's not what I want to know.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Right. So who was I don't know, taking the kids to school and
Right.
and holding your hand when you were saying, I can't do this, and
Yeah.
and who's been out there pushing it into the world and that kind of stuff?
That would be, well, my husband, Joost, gave me lots of time and space to write the book, and didn't nag me about anything, and just knew this is something I had to do. And he would watch the kids, which I have 3, on the Sunday afternoon during the writing workshops that I did. My close girlfriends from childhood, scattered around the world, everywhere from Africa and at the time Paris, they were really lifesavers. And when I was having a bad day, because it can be a very lonely process, you're in your head the whole time while you're writing. They would provide simple feedback sometimes of, why don't you call the fruit company this instead of that, or in the book, or so that was really. And then Andy Huber, a huge part of the team, just to get through every single week, and the dips, of which there are many when you're writing a book. So really close girlfriends that I could call upon, high school girlfriends, and my husband and my family, my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law. Everyone was just so encouraging and putting out there. And my closest friends are the ones that keep coming back and ordering more books to give to people as gifts and pushing out there. And Boom Chicago has been really great with this book event that's coming up in April, promoting, and Access magazine in The Hague. So there's all these pockets of people that are really excited about this book and are helping to get the word out there. Also, local bookshop in Breukelen.
I was curious, because there's a great book out there called The Creative Curve, written by a guy called Alan Gannett, and he reckons that anyone who's being really creatively or productively creative has a team around them, which they may not even realize is a team, that consists of a conflicting collaborator. So that would be your developmental editor, I reckon.
Yeah.
A prominent promoter, someone who's going out into the world and telling everyone about what you're doing and drumming you up support and work. A modern muse, which is an interesting one, your source of inspiration, your sense of purpose possibly, or literally just, I want to copy this person. And the last one is a master teacher.
Oh, nice.
And I think we've kind of covered 2.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what's the second to last one you said, with the one that inspires you? Yeah, I would say that's Colleen Getsky, who wrote the quote on the back of my book here.
Right.
She has stuff Dutch people like, and she did the whole self-publishing thing as well. And also you for the digital aspect, providing inspiration of getting the book out there digitally. So that's, and then the last one was?
The last one was the master teacher.
Master teacher.
An interesting one.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's a combination of Lisa Doctor in California and Lisa Friedman, who really taught more of the craft and provided such useful, valuable feedback along the way.
I mean, the reason why I try and sort of like split it out like this is, again, I find so many people, they feel that these things have to come fully formed from within, and that if they don't have that, and they know they don't have that, they don't feel they have the right to start. And
right.
So it's interesting to hear you talk about this and quite clearly lay out the fact that you didn't feel like you had all the skills you needed, so you went out and found someone to help you with it.
Exactly. And so I forgot, it was a podcast I listened to recently, because in the beginning too, every time I let the dog out, I was listening to a podcast on writing and how to this, how to that. And someone at one point, I can't remember, unfortunately, which podcast, but they said, you never know what you're going to write or what the story is when you sit down. You just don't. It goes through like at least 20 different versions until you think, oh, that's chapter 1, or that's a story. And then even then it can still change. So it's just constantly evolving and changing. I think that's something I didn't realize in the beginning, is how much with that creativity process, how much of it changes. And it's not something you can just sit down and I did work with a flexible layout. That's also something I learned from one of these writing podcasts, but it's constantly changing. So it's good to have a layout or an outline, a flexible outline, and then just tweak it along the way. Maybe that person doesn't die in chapter 5, and then maybe the main character has 1 kid instead of 5. Things are constantly changing.
I think that's such an important point as well, because I think, certainly in my conversations with people, their ideas around this whole process are so rigid.
Right. Yeah, and that's the wrong way to go, at least in my experience. And also with dates, I never knew it'd be so confusing. I still have all these calendars here over on the wall just to get my dates straight, because the main characters meet in a certain year, and then they moved to America, and I did first start writing a COVID novel, but then I figured, oh, nothing's possible. You can't go anywhere, do anything during a pandemic. So let me rewind, go back to 2019, and that's when the story takes place. And then you have to make sure you get all the graduation dates of the main characters from college and when they met. So yeah, constantly recording things, changing things.
You've outlined quite an extensive process of reading and podcast listening and, basically research and investigation. Did that at any point start to get in the way?
No, at a certain point I did have to stop listening to podcasts and how to, and I mentioned with the writing feedback group, at a certain point, then that was finished and I had to just carry on and do my thing. So at some point it could be too much information and too much how to. So it's kind of striking that right dosage of what you need and taking that for what it is and then moving on, and because otherwise it just becomes so overwhelming.
Yeah. And if you subsist on too much of a steady diet of that stuff, everything you then do becomes derivative.
I was actually talking to my developmental editor, Andy Huber, who's still a good friend of mine. She moved back to LA for a whole hour yesterday. And I was just talking to her about, I could have worked on this book for another couple of years. And so at a certain point, you just have to go with it, because I think that's most people's problem. And a lot of people who I speak to, actually, here, my family and some Dutch friends, they say, yeah, maybe it's the American go-getter in you. I don't know what, but you just do it and you're not afraid of failure. And that's true. I'm not. I just feel like, okay, there's going to be people that don't like this book, that don't enjoy the story, that find a couple of mistakes in there. And a shout out to Rebecca Blunden, who was my proofreader, who actually did help me at the very last stages there on that. But I could have spent years on this book and it still wouldn't be good enough, as some people might define it, to put it out there. But at a certain point, you just got to put it out there. I think that the story's ready enough, put out there. And that's something I think that a lot of people struggle with, and I struggle with myself, and I actually rushed to get through before the holidays because it wasn't supposed to come out until February.
I think so. I'm so glad you said that, because I see that a lot, and I have seen it a lot. This sense of perfectionism where something cannot be released into the wild, as it were, until every rough edge has been polished away. And unfortunately, before too long, that just does devolve into being too scared to put it out there. At some stage, you've just got to let it go and stand out there and live and die on its merits.
Right. Exactly.
Because there will be another book, or there will be another thing. This isn't the end of the road,
Right. Exactly. And I just figure, for those that are still scared, just take notes for an eventual second edition. That's what I started doing. I got the name of a statue somewhere wrong, and the paperweight I'm definitely changing for the next round. But those are all things you can just take note of, and just, I think at a certain point, good enough is as good as it's going to get. And do it. Just do it, Nike.
Yeah, I hate the fact that they copyrighted that.
I know.
Oh, I think that's probably a good place to stop. I just have one last question for you. What thing or things did you learn from this whole process that you're going to take out of this process and continue to use in your day-to-day life?
That's a very good question. This whole process has really helped me to slow down and appreciate the whole craft of writing. And having proven to myself that I actually could put a story out there has given me more joy in the whole sector, I guess you could say. I just really enjoy reading fiction now. I look at books differently. I read books differently now. I look at the world around me differently because I'm just more attuned to detail, because that's what writing does, that you have to write down all the detail, the smells, what someone's hands look like. And so that's amplified my daily experience, and that everything around me I'm really taking in more, trying to at least. So it's a nice reminder to me every day of just, just look at the world like a writer does. And it's more enjoyable. It helps me live more in the now, as cliche as that sounds, because I am always a forward-looking person.
Good. Hannah, thank you so much. It's been awesome talking to you.
Thank you, David.
And about your book, Place. And maybe just quickly tell people, if on the basis of this conversation they're really keen to buy your book, where's the best place for them to start?
The best place is on the Amsterdam Academy website, so www.amsterdamacademy.com/place. And there's more information on the book there. You can read the blurb and a couple of quotes on the book. There's a radio interview on there. It's also available in the ebook form on Barnes & Noble, and it's not on Amazon yet. It's Kobo, for those that have a Kobo reader. So those are the best places at the moment. I'm hoping to do an audio version of it soon.
Good luck with that.
Thanks.
Cool. Hannah, thank you so much for the chat.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, David.